Cody Rhodes opens up on his AEW exit and his WWE return. Plus, an AEW Originals contract is expiring. And Ring of Honor have been promised more care and consistent creative. It's all in the Cultaholic Wrestling News right now. Cody Rhodes had a lovely chat with Chris Van Vliet, two very washed, very well-dressed, dapper young men just chewing the fat and shooting the breeze.
And apart from us two, Cody Rhodes talked to Chris Van Vliet.
Well, I didn't want to say. One of the topics on the docket was Cody's departure from AEW and his WWE return, of course.
Absolutely. He spoke about AEW and his exit and said, I just remember AEW lovingly, and I also knew I was leaving. I knew it was a season. I knew this wasn't going to last, and I knew there was something greater for me out there. I know that might sound negative to people, but it's not. That's the biggest prize in the wrestling game. I have nothing but respect for my time there. I got to sharpen my skills like Hulkamania in the AWA right before it came to WWE. It's the same.
Now, yeah, when he says I think it's worth pointing out, so it's not taken out of context, when he says, I knew this wasn't going to last, he means his time in AEW.
Oh, yeah, he's not saying the company itself.
Yeah, I know there'll be some that will lift that. So.
And he knew it was a season for himself. You know,
yeah.
part of his journey back to WWE, I guess, which I can see why he said there that some people might find that negative, because it does kind of fly in the face of the rhetoric that was surrounding the beginnings of AEW. This is a new revolution, everything. But I guess he's being very honest here, very candid, saying this was part of my journey.
He goes on to say the energy was there, the renaissance was happening. It wasn't just company-based, it was all there. I just have a love for it because I got to sharpen my skills, and by the time I got to WrestleMania in WWE, I felt like, okay, I've come back as a complete package. He also talked a bit further about how his AEW time wrapped up. He wasn't particularly delighted with how it came to an end.
No, he said how AEW ended, or how his time in AEW ended, was terrible, really. And people are going to write books later on, and these stories are going to get out there, and then it's going to be a whole new ball game.
To certain fans from the AEW fandom, they need the story to be, they didn't want me, they pushed me out, they need, he was bad. They need that story. They need me to be the villain.
He goes on to say, I was always fine with accepting that because of the respect I have for AEW in the first place, how difficult it was to do the original All In, how unbelievable the feeling was to do Double or Nothing, how fortunate we were that Tony Khan wanted to invest in this vision, and he had a vision as well.
And regardless of any petty squabbles, I always had a love for it. I got to wrestle Brody Lee's final match. I got to lead people, young people, behind the scenes. I will always have a love for it.
It's very interesting because it does there feel like very much, first of all, Cody here seems throughout all the quotes we've just read at pains to stress that even though it ended badly for him, he still looks back fondly, he still has respect for the people there and everything. But then under that, there is this sort of underlying current of saying things like, you know, a book will come out, people will hear what's went on, petty squabbles aside and that sort of stuff. So it's a mixed bag here, and it's very interesting. I'm not expecting someone as kind of professional as Cody Rhodes to come out and say, this person said this and I fell out with this person and we had this argument and everything. But it is interesting. I think this is the most he's ever kind of leaned in that direction.
Really is. Now, when it comes to another member of the Rhodes family, there's news today regarding his status with AEW, as it was revealed recently that his contract with All Elite Wrestling is almost up. However, he was keen to shoot down any speculation online that he would be leaving the company.
Yes, it's Dustin Rhodes, of course. And he says, yes, my contract is up in September, and no, I am absolutely not done. Having the best matches of my life, and hopefully, God willing, I get to retire on my own terms, respected with a full heart.
Hopefully, negotiations go well, because I am damn worth the world. The only thing that matters to me are taking care of my family first and foremost, and finishing up when I am ready, and how I envision my retirement. So hold off, guys. This biz is my life, and I love doing it for you while still having fun and able. Hashtag keep stepping, and thank you for all your continued love and support. I can see him bowing out as part of AEW, but at the same time, once that is done, I do see Goldust going into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I
not think, Dustin, I see Goldust going in.
And I think he's a very worthy Hall of Famer as well. But yeah, it's nice to know that Dustin not only wants to continue this AEW run and has been very open about that, but that he also has the end in sight. You know, he knows that he's getting older and everything. He's already had a far more storied career than 99% of wrestlers ever do. And I think he deserves to, you know, as he says, retire on his own terms.
Maybe I was quick in thinking that it would just be Goldust that goes into the Hall of Fame. Maybe because obviously the Hall of Fame in WWE does encompass like WCW and NWA and
There's
stuff
people
like
like Tatsumi Fujinami in there, Carlos Colon,
So maybe Dustin Rhodes, but obviously a lot of discussion on Goldust.
Triple H seems to be a big fan of the old school NWA Mid-South kind of era.
Yeah, so maybe but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I think we've got a further run with Dustin Rhodes in AEW before we see a Hall of Fame induction, which I think is going to happen. Not long until we see Stephanie Vaca make her WWE television debut. She had 2 banger matches in Mexico over the weekend to welcome her into the warming glow of WWE. But on Keeping It 100, Conan's podcast, he was joined by sports writer Harry Ruiz, who talked about Stephanie Vaca's decision to join WWE over AEW.
Yeah, Ruiz revealed Shawn Michaels called her personally instead of having somebody call her. Michaels called her and then ended up laying out a plan for what they were going to do with her, and then a good monetary offer as well. So she ended up accepting WWE because they had the money, they had the creative, and it made more sense for her, even if this means she doesn't get to work with New Japan and CMLL.
Ruiz also mentioned an alleged incident on the day of Forbidden Door that might have influenced Stephanie Vaca's decision to sign with WWE over AEW, and it echoes what happened with CM Punk at All in which she was told she'd be picked up from the airport for the event, and she never was.
Yeah.
So she ended up having to make her own way there.
Now, I think that CM Punk one was looked at as kind of an isolated thing. It was in the midst of his very real, animosity between him and the Young Bucks and everything, and it seemed like just another petty shot between the two parties, right? That's how people seem to look at it. But now this happened to Stephanie Vaca, who, remember, was brought into Forbidden Door as this like special opponent for Mercedes Moné. So that one feels like much more of an issue, an accident, which in context with the previous Punk one could just be an issue that the company have to address going forwards, because as it was pointed out after the Punk one, for a company that size to be making such rudimentary mistakes, it's not a good look.
Logistical nightmare.
Yes, of course.
Which logistical cock-up, rather, that probably shouldn't have been happening in the first place.
Yeah, well,
if that is how it went down.
As me and you both kind of know firsthand, running a wrestling show is a logistical nightmare.
It is a logistical nightmare.
But when you reach that sort of size, those mistakes become less and less acceptable, don't they?
There is that. Now we'll end on Ring of Honor flavored news. Something that hasn't been too acceptable for Ring of Honor fans is the way that Ring of Honor has been booked lately. In the case that it's several weeks and weeks and weeks of fairly meandering television. The suddenly remembering that there's a pay-per-view, and all of a sudden flash booking. Where's all the champs? They're on another program. Like, it's been the story with Ring of Honor for a while, and even the most ardent of Ring of Honor fans, I'm looking at you, Kate, from Fightful, still going to fight you on Wembley Way, but even the most ardent of Ring of Honor fans are really struggling with it, but there is some hope today.
Fightful Select inquired about the future of Ring of Honor and reported, at least in the short term, we're told that Ring of Honor is likely to have more care given to it. The upcoming Arlington tapings were pointed to as what could be a turning point, as the brand is getting dedicated taping shows.
Well, one source told Fightful is that you should lead to at least more consistent, this should lead rather to more consistent creative in that sense, as numerous shows will be filmed across one day, as opposed to the show being filmed weekly before or after Dynamite or Collision. And I think that inconsistency kind of allows for sort of creative, a creative malaise to set in, shall we say.
And they go on to say another note and point that was given was that MXM, Mason Mansour, I assume that
yes,
means, being assigned specifically for the Ring of Honor brand as of right now, that's a positive step, because we've seen far too many, big names in the Ring of Honor brand barely ever appear in the Ring of Honor brand, like the current champion Mark Briscoe, who is very much more an AEW wrestler, really. Fightful say, we did ask if champions would be featured more on ROH TV, whether it be matches or appearances, and it was indicated that it does look that way with the upcoming tapings. Very positive news, very positive step. We were talking about this just the other day on the news, how in the build-up to the next pay-per-view, once again, as you've mentioned, they've been scrabbling to put matches together with very little backstory to them. This seems like AEW have finally decided to, or Ring of Honor have finally decided to address these issues and improve the product.
It seems that way. So
it's a very welcome step.
It's a very, very welcome step, because Lord knows Ring of Honor needs a little bit of love thrown their way. And we thank you for throwing a bit of love our way. For the latest wrestling news throughout the day, you can check out Cultaholic.com. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.